Hi, and welcome back to The Jesse Tree by Geraldine McCaughrean and illustrated by B. Wiley. Today's chapter is called The Cunning and the Wise. Look up then, said the carpenter, and they both bent their heads back to examine the roof above them. High in the vaulted ceiling, plaster was peeling and an area of black damp spread from one corner. What's beyond the roof? The sky. And what's beyond the sky? Space, planets, the stars? Exactly, breathed Mr. Butterfield. It's been the same ever since people had eyes to look. Same constellations, same galaxies, but suppose one night you looked up and you saw a new star. A supernova, you mean? Or a comet? Or an intergalactic meteorite skipping over the Earth's atmosphere? Doesn't matter which. Just suppose this brand new twinkling pinpoint of light looked you in the eye and winked. The two uncricked their necks and stared at one another, and the carpenter began a new story. Far away in the east, three astronomers uncricked their necks and stared at one another. A new star? What does it mean? Said Caspar. An omen, said Melchior, eyes full of starlight. Saddle the camels, said Balthasar. We must go and see for ourselves. Someone's been born who's going to change the history of the world. The three scholars took their bearings from the new star and traveled west. Their camels waded through rivers, struggled over sand dunes, spat at robbers lurking in the dark. During the day, the three sheltered from the sun and from the sandstorms, biting mosquitoes and knife-edged winds. But every night they rode on, led by the star, clutching gifts for the newborn king. Surely someone whose coming warranted a new star in the sky must be an emperor or a king. Riding into Jerusalem at long last, they made for the palace, of course, and explained their mission to the king who lived there. Where is this new king whose birth we have seen written in the stars? They asked. We've come a long way to pay our respects to him. King Herod only ruled Israel by permission of the Romans, but he clung on grimly to his crown and his throne and his little bit of power. Now a pang of anger went through him like an arrow. He knew nothing of such a birth. A new king? A new king? He thought to himself. I am the only king of these people. But to the three travelers he said, I am afraid I know of nothing of this star child. When you find him, please come back and tell me, so that I too may pay my respects. Under the folds of his robe, his fingers toyed with a dagger in its jeweled sheath. These three scholars might be wise in the ways of the night sky, but Herod had enough cunning to snuff that star out of theirs. You'd need very long arms to snuff out the star, said a boy. Mr. Butterfield nodded. And Herod might have been a big important man, but inwardly he was small-minded, and small-minded people never reach the stars. Much to the astonishment of Caspar, Melchior, and Balthasar, the star finally came to rest over the small town of Bethlehem. The roads were so narrow that the camels had to move in single file. Somewhere a dog barked. The three wondered if they hadn't made some terrible mistake along the way. What an exotic sight they must have been for anyone coming out of that late night. Three people outlandishly dressed, gabbing in a foreign language and pointing at the stars. What strange noises the innkeeper and the customers must have heard as they turned in their beds, camels groaning and belching and slumping down onto their knees. What a strange night for Mary. Three dust-stained, wealthy strangers thrusting gifts at her baby. What a strange discovery for the astronomers. Weary, working people, a baby in a feed box, the nervy animals stepping from hoof to hoof. And yet, for this moment, fire had kindled in the distant galaxies. and careened across the night sky to announce the birth of a king. Mary took the presents, a bag of foreign gold, a box of frankincense. She had smelled the scent on the hair and clothes of her cousin Zachariah after a day spent inside God's temple. And lastly, the visitors presented a jar of myrrh. The chisel slipped, sinking its blade into the carpenter's left palm. "You've hurt yourself." "It's nothing," said Mr. Butterfield, but blood welled up in the cut and fell onto his work, onto the carved manger. They both watched it redden the wood. "An odd gift for a baby, myrrh," said Mr. Butterfield, licking his cut. "It's for the dead, you know. An ointment used to anoint dead people." Their hands brushed as they pointed out the different symbols on the Jesse tree, remembering the stories that they had shared together. "He's a once upon a time and the end," said Mr. Butterfield. They sat down breathless, their backs against the trunk of the Jesse tree. "I'm sorry you hurt your hand." "Don't worry about it, son. Tree's all but finished, isn't it? All but done?" "I'll mend. Don't you fret. I'll mend. But speaking of blood, I haven't finished telling you about King Herod."